Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have lots of people starting to file in here, so we're just going to wait a moment to get started. But if you all want to let us know where you're coming from in the chat so we can get to know you a little bit better, that would be great. Even the name of your organization, we'd love to kind of get to know who we have on the call today. Everybody's always shy at the start. It only takes one, and then they all want to say where they're from. Okay, we've got Rosanna from Toronto, from Aurelia. We've got someone from North Carolina. Hi, Beverly. From Colorado. Look at this. I love when there's such a nice mix of Canadian friends and American friends on the call. Lots of people from BC, from Hamilton. Okay, amazing. Well, we are going to get started. I know people are still continuing to file in, so welcome. First of all, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be here. My name is Meredith. I'm Keela's head of marketing. We also have Stephanie, our marketing specialist, helping us out today on the tech side of things. So you may see Steph in the chat or answering some of your technical questions, so feel free to say hello to her. Before we get started, I just want to start the session today by acknowledging that Keela's head office is located in Vancouver, which is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and give thanks for their generosity and hospitality on these lands and waters. If you're new to Keela, welcome. Keela is a fundraiser CRM, meaning that it is designed with the unique needs of fundraisers in mind and aims to unify fundraising, communications, and donor management into one single source of truth for fundraisers. Should you have any questions at all during the presentation that you would like Lydia to answer, please enter them in the chat box or in the Q&A section, and we will get to as many as we can at the end. Speaking of the chat box, we highly recommend that you put any thoughts, any ideas, anything that you want to share throughout the presentation. Just remember to select everyone when you type so that all of our guests today can read your comments and questions. And finally, the most popular question, yes, this webinar is being recorded. You will all receive access to the recording before the end of the week. Now, I'm really excited to welcome our expert speaker today, Lydia Varesco-Racoma. So through her company, Lydia Varesco Designs, Lydia is a blogger, speaker, and leads branding and creative workshops for nonprofits, associations, and small businesses around the world. So she's here today to talk to us about Giving Tuesday branding, which I know Giving Tuesday is quickly approaching. Everybody must be thinking about it. So I am going to hand this over to Lydia.
Great. Thank you so much, Meredith. I am so excited to be back here at Keela. I've spoken a couple times in the past. Maybe some of you have seen me, but I always love the engagement and the conversations that come out of these talks. So I'm excited about today's talk. So let's get going. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. So as Meredith mentioned, today we're going to be talking about Giving Tuesday and specifically how you can use branding to maximize your impact on this day. So first, I'd love to start out with a poll. It's going to pop up on the screen in just a couple seconds, but here's our question. So I'd like to see, does your organization intentionally incorporate branding into your Giving Tuesday campaigns? So that can be this year's campaign, this can be previous campaigns, just to kind of get a sense of where everybody is at with how you're using branding in your organization. So first answer, obviously, yes. Two, kind of, maybe you're doing some, but not really, don't have really a plan. And then three would be no, that you haven't really thought about it. And then you're in the right place, definitely. But even for those of you that are incorporating branding already, I think you'll definitely get some good tips here. All right, so let's see how many. I think we've got a pretty good amount that have answered. Okay, great. So we have about 40% have said, 39% have said yes, 29% sort of, and 31% no. So we're pretty evenly split between those three, which is great because I think everybody, no matter what group you're in, you're going to be able to either really get going on your branding or make some of those improvements in the next couple of weeks. All right, great. So let's go to our next slide. All right. For some reason, the poll is still up on my screen.
It should be
Okay.
going away there.
I'm not sure if I can get rid of it on this end. Let's see. Yeah, it's still only letting me view results,
Oh,
share
you,
results.
oh, are you still seeing the box there?
Yes, hold on, let me do this. Let me stop sharing. There we go. Okay, now I can get it out of the way. All right, sorry about that. Okay, we're back. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay, so Giving Tuesday, 3 weeks away. Today's Tuesday. So it's going to be really important that we talk about first why branding is important for Giving Tuesday. Then we'll talk about the key components of a strong brand. So, for those of you that maybe aren't incorporating branding yet, we'll go over the basics, just to kind of give you that foundation. And then we'll talk about creating branding that resonates with donors. And then we'll talk about using branding effectively throughout your campaign, your Giving Tuesday campaign. And then I'll have some tips for staying on brand and saving time as you're working on your campaign. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. And at the end, I will be sharing a whole bunch of resources for you as well to help you along with your campaign. And as Meredith mentioned, feel free to put your questions in the chat. If there is something, that is pressing that comes up, she can stop me and I can address it. Otherwise, I can take questions at the end as well. So first, let's talk about why branding is important for Giving Tuesday. So every potential donor will take a different digital journey. So you don't really know where or how they're going to find you. I mean, this is the case really, in all of your sort of fundraising and awareness efforts, but especially for Giving Tuesday, because that is an important one for a lot of organizations. So you want to make sure that you can be found in the different places where the donors may be. So as you can see, I have an example here of some different brand touch points. So touch points are basically the places where you are expressing your brand, the places where people will find you, interact with you, find out more about you. So you can see like the typical ones here, your website, social media, email marketing. Those are pretty much, the typical ones that everybody's using generally. But then also content marketing, if you're doing some blogs or thought leadership, your donation page, which is obviously crucial for Giving Tuesday, and then any sort of landing pages. So if you have sort of special fundraising related or campaign related landing pages, these are all different places where those donors may find you, and you want to make sure that your brand is being expressed both consistently and effectively. So you're telling your story in an effective way. And you can see I'm going to be sprinkling in a lot of data from reports that will share, information relating to fundraising in general and then Giving Tuesday fundraising. So here's one from Classy. They put out a report every year on the modern state of philanthropy. And they mentioned that they found that supporters who participate in multiple campaigns are 4 times more valuable than those who are just in a single campaign. So again, you really want to keep an eye on all those brand touch points and make sure that you are consistently sharing your message wherever somebody, a potential donor or even a current donor, may find you. So another reason why branding is important on Giving Tuesday is that digital donor experiences are increasing. And we've seen this, the data changes slightly each year. I always go in and get the most recent reports. So I looked at the fundraise report on global trends in giving, and social and email are the top 2 fundraising channels. This really hasn't changed much over the last, maybe 5 years or so. They're always kind of similar, like maybe one is like 40%, one is 42%. But those are, it's increasing. How much people are using those channels are increasing. Search ads have also become quite popular. People are getting a pretty good return on ad spend on those, like Google ads in particular. So that's another place, where somebody would experience your brand digitally. And then, Facebook, we've seen that is usually the most popular channel for nonprofits to use. However, one of the reports showed that organizations were gaining more followers on Instagram. So, again, the data is slightly different each year, but it's showing that these digital experiences are increasing. So you definitely, again, want to make sure that you're getting your Giving Tuesday branding and messaging out there. So the next part of why it's important is the impact of Giving Tuesday is growing. So here's some data from last year. So last year they broke previous records. They had an increase of 15% over 2021 and a 25% increase over 2020. So, that's what we like to see, that there's an increase each year, which is nice because that's, giving some, you can inform your campaign, maybe for next year. But what they did see in last year's Giving Tuesday is that online donations in the US exceeded 1 billion for the first time. So that was also, one of those record-breaking years that they had seen. And then over 10 million gave goods or volunteered. So those both giving goods or volunteering, both of those increased from the previous year. So that's also something to keep in mind is how are you engaging with these donors or potential donors in a non-monetary way? And again, through your branding, showing them those experiences they can have with your organization. And then next, donors want to be recognized. They want to know that you are grateful for the donation that they've given. They want to know that how you're using that donation. So Giving Tuesday is a great way to share gratitude. So outside of, other opportunities throughout the year, this is a great time to do it because it is really a day that is made for that, for kind of thanking those supporters, for giving back because so many people are participating. So many people are giving back on this particular day. And then also there was a report that showed that donors will stop giving to an organization if they don't get acknowledged for their support. So again, something to keep in mind as you're working on your campaign and your branding is how will we thank them? How will we acknowledge them? And then next, the last reason why I think it's important is that your donor stewardship should be professional. So you really want people when they're interacting with you to have that experience where they can see you are a legit organization, you are doing things, you're making a difference. And you can definitely get that across through your branding. So a couple of stats here. And this has been data over the last couple of years, that branded donation pages always raise more than generic pages. And I think that is part of it is that professionalism, that sort of connection that yes, this is a real organization that is going to use the money in a resourceful way to do good. And then also reports have shown that donors give larger gifts to branded donation pages. So you really do want to focus on that, have that really professional, consistent brand experience, include your logo, your brand messaging on those Giving Tuesday donation pages that you're creating. So just to kind of wrap it up here on the importance of branding and Giving Tuesdays, some of the things that branding can help you do in your organization on this day of fundraising. Tell your story. This is a big one. So if people are coming to you for the first time, tell them that story. Tell them who you are and why it's important, your mission and what you're doing and why they should interact with you. Make that mission resonate with donors. You can increase donations, if we've seen by some of these stats. On Giving Tuesday, you can attract new donors. It's a great way to get new people interested and to keep the existing donors excited about your organization and what you're doing. You can build and cultivate those relationships, and then you can deliver that strong multi-channel brand experience that we talked about that is going to make fundraising more effective. rather than focusing just on one brand experience. You're really allowing people to learn your story and participate in your campaign in multiple places, those touch points that we talked about. So now let's talk about the key components of a strong brand. So here we're going back to sort of branding 101. For those of you that maybe don't have it necessarily at the top of your list, or you haven't, been able to focus as much on branding, I look at it as a combination of these 4 elements. So your purpose, your brand visuals, your brand messaging, and then the experience. And now we'll talk a little bit more about each of those and how they all work together. So the purpose, this is really, your mission, your vision, that framework, those building blocks of your organization, your values, your unique story, that people connect with. Really, the purpose is the what creates the connection, right? And you can see, like, I will sprinkle in some data points from for-profit, points of view, because I think that's also really important to study and see how we can apply that, in our nonprofit marketing and communications. So in this study from Havas Group, they showed that 77% of consumers buy from brands that share the same values. Well, I think this can apply to nonprofits. I think that most donors, they of course want to give to nonprofits and be involved with nonprofits that share their values. I know that's how it is for me, with the organizations that I support. So it's really important in your brand that you have this very clear in your organization, to everybody in the organization, that purpose. So next is the visuals. So this is what people, I think about most of the time when the word brand comes up. You think like, oh, my logo, my colors of my brand. And yes, that is true. That is a crucial part of your brand. That's the visual part. That's what people see, right? When they're scrolling through social media or they get an email from you, they probably see your logo and the colors and the typography that you're using, as well as the imagery that you use. So whether you use illustrations, photography, iconography, this is all part of your brand visuals. And again, that consistency that we want to create within a strong brand. And again, this is a great data stat here at the bottom. Using a signature color can increase brand recognition by 80%. I'm not surprised, right? Because most of us, we do respond to that color of a brand and we know who it is right away. And we want all of your organizations to have that brand recognition as well. So next in our components of a strong brand is messaging. So this, in the case of GivingTuesday, we're looking at your campaign theme. So what have you decided is the theme of this year's campaign? And then also, what are the key messaging points? What do you want to get across to your audience in your theme? And then voice and tone. So this is, something, the rest of these are, this is sort of throughout your brand, not just for GivingTuesday. But what is the voice and tone of your brand? How does it come across to people? How do you interact with people? What is your differentiation? What makes you different from other organizations that maybe, do something similar to you? And then finally, the calls to action. So what are you asking people to do in your campaign? Most likely you're asking them to donate, right? But like we said, there's also those non-monetary aspects of GivingTuesday where you might be asking them, come and donate goods. We're doing a coat drive. We're asking for volunteers to help us at this community event. So all of this is part of the messaging aspect of your brand. And then lastly, we have the brand experience. And this is something, it's a little less concrete, than a logo or a messaging point, but this is really how people feel and react to your brand. So when they're around you, this is whether it's in person at an event, whether it's online and they're interacting with you, the work environment. So if they do come into your offices, your work environment, how are they greeted? How do they feel when they come in? And this is everybody from the people you serve all the way through your team members, your volunteers, your donors, your prospective donors. And here's another quote, another data point from this one from Salesforce. Again, this is consumer facing, but I think it can apply, in the nonprofit world is Most consumers say that a brand's treatment of its customers influences their decision to purchase. And I would flip that, that how you are interacting with your potential donors will influence their decision to make a donation or to interact with your organization or support you. So it's really that brand experience is also important to think about as you are considering these key components of your brand. So just to recap, those four things, put them together, and that will make a great Giving Tuesday experience. So I really wanted you to have this groundwork to start to think about, how are we expressing those four key components of our brand? And how can we do it now specifically in our Giving Tuesday campaigns? So now let's talk about creating branding that resonates with donors, that really connects with them. So first, you want to revisit your organization's who, what, and why. So this is what I consider the three key components to your brand is the who is the people you serve, the what is the problem that you solve, and the why is the reason you exist. And then where is encompassing kind of everything because those are the content channels you're using, those touch points that we talked about. But as you're working on your campaign, it's good to kind of go back again to branding 101 and think about who is our audience? What are we trying to get across to them? What is our why? Because people really connect with the why. And on Giving Tuesday as well, it's really important to know what the why is and to put it out there in your messaging and your visuals, and so that people can really resonate with it. And then next, you want to think about the campaign in stages. So I've outlined 5 stages here that we're going to look at for your Giving Tuesday campaign. We will look at each of them in detail, but this is kind of an outline of them. So connect, accept, think, report, and cultivate. And then we will talk about it a little bit more in our next section. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you are incorporating branding throughout all of your campaign touchpoints. So we looked at the same graphic earlier on in the presentation, the different ways that you may express your brand. So you want to make sure that you are incorporating branding in all of these touchpoints. So if you're doing maybe a blog post about Giving Tuesday, you want to make sure, am I expressing that who, what, and why? Are we being authentic? Are we telling people who we really are? Are they connecting with us? So no matter which of these touch points you're using, you really want to make sure that you're expressing your branding throughout and that it's going to be genuine and will resonate with those donors, potential volunteers, people that are going to be champions of your brand and your organization. So now we'll talk about using branding effectively throughout your campaign. So here's where we're going to talk about those 5 stages that I just outlined. So this is how, you can look at any campaign, I guess, in these stages. Today, we're going to specifically look at Giving Tuesday because obviously that's what most of you are working on right now. But you can also use this, in other campaigns that you're doing. It's a nice framework to just sort of make sure that you're hitting all of those points, where you'll be interacting with donors. So first, we're going to start with the connect stage. So this is where you will be telling the story of your campaign through words and visuals. So in our Branding 101 overview, we looked at how our brand is expressed through our visuals, our logo, our colors, our fonts, and how it's also expressed through words, through our messaging, through our campaign theme, through some of those messaging points we have. So in this first phase, you really want to think about how you'll be telling your story. So what are some of those key messaging points? What are the types of visuals you can use? How can you make sure that you're being authentic and meaningful throughout? And you really want to not only help new donors get to know you and kind of, start to understand your mission, but also reconnect with those current donors. Maybe things have changed. Maybe they donated a year ago and things have changed, and you really want them to be updated and to know what's going on, and to, if they've sort of dropped out, maybe they'll be excited again, to engage with your organization. And you can see the data point at the bottom here was that more than half of nonprofits said that stories improve their fundraising results. And I truly believe this. I am obviously a brand strategist. I'm a designer, and storytelling is a huge part of who a brand is. So first part of this, creating your campaign is really thinking about how you'll be telling your story. And some of the touch points that you'll be using in this phase of the campaign would be those campaign emails that you send. So the launch email, some of you may have already done that, reminder emails, campaign overview posts. So if you'll be doing social posts or blogs to kind of give people an overview of your campaign, behind the scenes posts are great. People really love to see that, what's going on, how can I be involved? About us posts are great, around Giving Tuesday to start to highlight maybe members of your staff or volunteers or your work that you're doing. And then thought leadership. So this is where maybe somebody in your organization is doing a guest blog for another organization or for a local, maybe like a local media outlet, or maybe someone in the organization is on a podcast or they're in a local news segment talking about Giving Tuesday and how you're interacting with the community in Giving Tuesday. And this is really important to really know your brand, because whoever will be speaking, they will be speaking to probably a large audience of people that don't know who you are. And so you definitely want to make sure you have a handle on that who, what, and why, and really knowing, your campaign theme and what you are trying to achieve in this campaign, making sure that that's going to get across, in any of those, thought leadership outlets. So here's an example from Donor Perfect. They had supplied some templates. I think this was maybe a year or two ago. They had some templates for Giving Tuesday fundraising campaigns. So this was a template for a campaign reveal. So this was, really kind of like, how are you putting your own spin on Giving Tuesday? You want to get that across to your audience. What is your campaign mission? And then, again, kind of the typical ways that you may speak to your donors or prospective donors, how you can get involved, what that money is going towards, other ways you can get involved. So this was a nice example of a template, but how you can also sort of incorporate your own branding and your messaging into that email. So you really want to also utilize the Giving Tuesday brand affinity and awareness. So here's an example of their logo, the icon that's used, the graphics that they provide. So you really want to tap into that. And you don't have to, change all of your colors. You'll see as we talk about it as we move forward, but people know the Giving Tuesday branding. They've seen it. They see it a lot more often now because they do other events throughout the year as well. So it's nice to tap into that as well in this first phase of planning your campaign. And because Giving Tuesday is an unbranded movement, you can use their branding along with yours. You can adapt it. So here's an example of a campaign I did for one of my clients. And we took the Giving Tuesday logo and the icon, but we applied it into their brand colors, their brand fonts, their brand imagery. And it was really a nice way, I thought, to incorporate it, because people will see it like, yes, Giving Tuesday, I recognize that heart, but we haven't strayed from their brand, which is also recognizable to their audience. So the next stage of the campaign would be accept. So this is where you're going to acknowledge their gift and show them this is what you make possible. And as we talked about in the beginning of the presentation, we know that this is important to people. We know that people want to be acknowledged. If they're not, maybe they'll stop giving. So you really want to be specific about the impact that their contribution is making to your mission. You want to use, imagery along with maybe data or stats that you've collected, anything that can really acknowledge, this is what you're making possible by giving us this gift. So some of the touch points that you would be using in this phase of the campaign would be impact stories, including images if possible, because that really helps, I think, to show the impact. Infographics are great in this phase. And there's easy ways to create infographics. Nowadays, Canva is a great app to use to create easy infographics. You can work with a designer to create them, or other, types of apps. Staff stories are great to tell in this phase of acceptance or acknowledgement. Program or initiative highlights, so that they can see, like, oh yes, I see that my donation went towards this program or this initiative. Kind of just makes more of a connection for them. And then also, these are great on Giving Tuesday, is having donors or supporters post. Have them use your hashtag, have them use hashtag unselfie, which is something that Giving Tuesday has been using, and really kind of get that excitement going for everybody throughout the campaign. And here's a couple of examples. The one on the left is from Giving Tuesday Philippines, and this was a great example of an impact post. So not only sharing the stats within the post copy, but a really nice engaging image that shows, makes it real, like just brings, reality to these numbers that we're sharing. And then on the right is an example of the Giving Tuesday, their Unselfie campaign that they use. And they do have a series of Canva templates that you can easily personalize, and they're great. So if you're a Canva user, I have that listed in my resources, so you can have a direct link to that. But in addition to this one that you see about the Unselfie, they have a lot of examples of templates that you can just personalize with your organization's information. So the next stage we're going to talk about is the thank stage. So this is where you've acknowledged that gift and you're thanking them for the gift. And you want to make it really personal in this stage. Hopefully tying it in with your brand story, using that voice and tone that we talked about, that's part of your brand, incorporating that into this stage so that you really are, speaking to them as a friend, somebody that you talk to throughout the year, that you interact with. And again, another stat here is that donors will stop giving if they don't feel that acknowledgement. They don't feel that you've thanked them, for what, their, whether it's financial or their time that they've put into it. They want to know that they are, that they're acknowledged for that. So definitely think about how you can make it personal in your Giving Tuesday campaign. So some of the touch points that you would be using in this phase would be a thank you email. So this would be maybe, to like a large email to your whole donor base, or this would be sort of specific emails that you send to donors, but just in a way that you can make it personal. Social media shout outs are great in this phase. And that's definitely a way that you can get a little bit more personal, whether you're thanking a person, an organization that has made a donation. Recognition on a website. So that's a good one if you don't have the capacity maybe to thank every single person via, an email or a social media post. Having that recognition on a website really does make a difference. People love to see their name, right? I mean, I'm the same way. It's like, it's fun to see your name and you feel like recognized by the organization. So that's a great way to do it. If you have a large donor base to thank. There's also online donor walls, live stream events, where you can stream the names of those donors, and then donor quotes. So that can be used in emails, donation pages, and your social media. And then lastly, it's become quite popular. A lot of organizations now, they're doing thank you videos. So there's a couple of different apps, Bonjoro and Wistia are a couple of apps where, and those are both paid, paid apps, but you can make those thank you videos. It can be a 10-second, 15-second video, super easy to make, probably easier than maybe putting together an email or a social media post even. So that's another nice way that you can thank donors. And as you can see in the stat at the bottom, first-time donors who get a personal thank you within 48 hours are 4 times more likely to give again. And that's great. I mean, that's pretty big deal. So if you're able to focus in, this portion, this stage of your campaign, it will really pay off, throughout your year of fundraising, not just for Giving Tuesday. So here's a couple of examples of that thank you stage that we're talking about. So on the left, they've thanked a particular organization that gave to them a group of accountants, it looks like, and then maybe some other organizations. So this is a nice way of thanking maybe a specific organization or specific people. And then on the right, you can see this is thanking donors of a larger campaign. So the Madison Ballet, they took they participated in the hashtag GivingTuesday, which is a popular hashtag on Giving Tuesday, and they're thanking a larger group here. Both are good to do. So you kind of have to decide, are we going to thank everybody in a large group? Are we going to be a little more personal? Do we have the capacity to be a little bit more personal and thank people and organizations separately? So here's an example, again, from Donor Perfect, those templates that they have available. So a thank you email. So, again, if you are still working on your campaign, Donor Perfect does have this toolkit of free templates. But, as long as you are thanking your supporters, you're telling them, who are you helping? Who are you working with? What is your mission? As long as they get that thank you email and they feel that gratitude, however you do it, that's the most important part. So now let's talk about the report stage of the campaign. So this is where you're showing donors the results of the campaign and how you plan to invest their gifts. So this is where you're showing, it's real time. You want to show a sense of urgency. You're sharing numbers, but also the stories and visuals, because again, numbers don't really mean much if it's not humanized, if they don't know the stories behind the numbers. And again, another stat here, donors will stop giving if they feel the organization doesn't tell them how the money's used. So this is a really important stage of your campaign for Giving Tuesday and throughout the year, so that the donors do, again, they know how the money's being used. They feel like they've made a difference. So some of the touch points in this stage of your campaign would be those countdown timers. So you saw I had one in the beginning of the presentation, three more weeks, 3 weeks left until Giving Tuesday. And that's, again, those are effective because it is showing that urgency, and people are like, oh my gosh, it's only 3 weeks. I better, get my credit card and donate now so I don't forget. You might also have timers. You might have a fundraising thermometer. Those, are always popular. Results and a story behind the campaign. A post-campaign email with results. Hopefully that's on your radar. And then those ongoing campaign updates via social and email. They're really important. Now that we're getting to the last 3 weeks, it's probably good to maybe be sending weekly emails to your followers. Some people might even be sending more frequent ones if that's, working for your organization. But you really do want to make sure that you are giving those updates, throughout, especially towards the end of the campaign, so you can get some of those last minute people that, wait. So here's a couple of examples, the one example of the updated giving total, to kind of inspire people, help us get to our, what our goal is. And then on the right, an example of those, the fundraising thermometer. Those are great because it's a visual, you can see, oh my goodness, they just have a little bit more, to get there. Let's help them. So, visually, if you can show people that urgency, that sense of urgency, it's always going to be more effective than just asking them, please give us, there's only 3 more weeks. So then the last stage that we'll talk about is cultivate. So this is where you're going to start to cultivate those relationships. So after Giving Tuesday, you'll be staying in touch with them. You'll be, developing or growing the relationship, showing them how else they can get involved. That's a great one because, especially for people that are a little bit new to your organization, maybe they can volunteer, they can come to an event, attend a webinar, they can get to know you better and hopefully become more involved. For the ones that already are involved, help them become a brand ambassador, provide a toolkit for them with your logo and messaging points and, help us share this throughout the year. You really want to stay top of mind. And that's where, some of the touch points that we've talked about, that those regular touch points that you have with your donors and your supporters. Because, as you can see in the stat here, donors will stop giving if they don't recall supporting your organization. So again, some people do make those yearly donations and they kind of forget about it. So let's make sure that you are keeping in touch with them. You are, staying top of mind when Giving Tuesday, when it comes up, when your, fiscal year end fundraising comes up. They remember you. So in this stage, in our final stage, we will continue to tap into those emotions, those shared values that we've been doing throughout the campaign. And some of these touch points will be a welcome email series for new donors. So, make sure you have something set up. No matter which email program you're using, usually you can set up this welcome series pretty easily. So some people do maybe like 3 emails, 4 emails. They come over the course of like a week or two, but tell them your story. Mention upcoming events and opportunities where they can get involved. Think about how you can start segmenting your emails to a particular audience or personalizing those emails. Continue to give them updates on the impact, as a result of their giving. And then make sure that you are still using that branded messaging, imagery, video content to really keep that relationship going. And as you can see in the stat below from HubSpot, which I love HubSpot, they're definitely one of my go-to sources for marketing in general. Just the word video in an email subject line increases open rates and click-throughs. So, think about how you can start incorporating video content in this final stage, especially. It's great. If you took maybe some videos during your events, during your campaign events, those are great to share now at the end of this stage. So here's an example. 4 months later, after Giving Tuesday, they did an update on their campaign impact. And, we raised $20,000 for this vital equipment. And now we have it, and we're so grateful. So, again, they're keeping their donors involved, and they can see the impact that they helped to make. So it's not just, oh, I gave the money, it's a one-time thing. No, you are helping to create this impact on a long-term basis. So those updates are really important to build into your plan as you create your Giving Tuesday plan. Build in time for those updates after the campaign ends. So just to recap here, our 5 stages of a Giving Tuesday campaign. We have our connect stage, where you're creating that authentic and meaningful storytelling. We have the accept stage, where you are acknowledging the possibilities. You have the thank stage, where you have personal and thoughtful gratitude. You have the report stage, where you're showing them the good that comes from the gifts they've given. And lastly, the cultivate stage, where you're developing and growing the relationship in the long term. Now, lastly, let's talk about staying on brand and saving time. So this will be especially important now because, yes, we're 3 weeks out. So some of you might be kind of in full swing with your campaign, or maybe you're just kind of getting started. But I've got a few tips here that will help you, no matter which phase you are with your campaign. So first, what I suggest is creating a campaign brand guide. So this is, sort of a mini brand guide. Many of you, maybe have a brand guide for your organization, which is wonderful. I love them. Encourage everybody to have them. But this is like a mini version of it that is specific to your campaign. And it's, mostly going to be used for social media, email marketing. But basically, it's a really nice way that you can make sure that everybody is being consistent in their outreach when they are talking about your Giving Tuesday campaign. Especially again, if you're doing some of those opportunities where they're doing maybe local media or podcasts or that type of thing, you can make sure that everybody can see at a glance, this is our theme, this is our voice, that we want to get across, the hashtags that we're using. And then you might even have some example posts. So I always like to show, that's why, in the bottom of this template, this is a Canva template that I will supply to you, but you can drop in images of posts, and they can be, posts you've created. They can be posts you've seen that you're inspired by, but it's just a nice, at a glance, you can kind of see this is, like a mood board. This is how we want our campaign to come across. And this way everybody can be consistent and on the same page. So the next way to stay on brand and also save time is to create design templates. So I touched on it a little bit, but you can, work with a graphic designer, have them create branded templates. This is something like I showed you some examples of the ones that I'd created for my client. I do that quite often with my clients, where they can just go in and change things. They can change it to say 2 more weeks or 5 more days, until Giving Tuesday. You can also use a graphics app and you can load all of your brand assets into the brand kit. I put logos here for the top two, Adobe Express and Canva. They both function similarly in the sense that they have this brand kit where you can upload your logo, your colors, your fonts. And this way it just makes it a little easier, a little more foolproof that you're staying on brand. But those are both great tools to use, and there's free versions of both of those. And then you can also start creating some infographics and videos. So I talked about, again, you can do that in Canva. You can create one infographic and then use that as your template. And then maybe another week you can update the information or change the information. So these tools are really great to use, for those purposes. Lumen 5 is a video content creator. So again, you can drop in your own content, use their stock content, and it just makes the process of making a video a little bit quicker and easier if you're doing it in-house. And then lastly, you want to share the templates with your team. You want to make sure that everybody's accessing the same template so that things, don't look different. This person's using this color, this one's using that color. It's not a brand color. So again, in Canva and Adobe, you can share templates throughout, your team, which is really handy. And in my resources, I will have links to these three, as well as maybe other design resources, that you might need along the way as you are working on your campaign. Then next, I touched on this a little bit. To save time, you can use the Giving Tuesday post templates. So they started doing this, I think, a couple of years ago, and these are all in Canva. Again, you'll get that link in the resources straight to this page. And I've grabbed just a couple examples, but they have save the date, ways to give, the unselfie, thank you. They have these kind of general ones, that say together we give, and they're all in Canva. So you can add elements, you can adjust elements, add your logo, type a different message, add pictures. It's really great. So if you are feeling like it's 3 weeks, we haven't started, or we're really kind of strapped for time, this is a great place to start, to go to that Giving Tuesday Canva resources page. It's really great. And they, as you can see, they're in a lot of different orientations, whether you're doing, Instagram, Facebook posts, whether you're doing a video, pretty much you can find any size or format that you need or change them to the size that you need. And then lastly, if you don't have your own imagery, there is Giving Tuesday stock imagery available. Again, I think this was a couple of years ago. I was really excited to see that Pexels, some of you may be familiar with Pexels. It is a resource for free stock photography. They've really started to expand their collection just in general with way more diverse, inclusive imagery. It's wonderful. So they added this Giving Tuesday collection. So it's not huge, there's not like hundreds and hundreds of images, but if you needed something in a pinch, that's a great place to look, and it's free. And then iStock also has a collection of Giving Tuesday inspired images. So it's not necessarily like, the one you see on top, there's the Giving Tuesday logo. At the bottom, you can see it's a little more generic. But again, it might be something that works for your organization for that day. You could always take it and put the Giving Tuesday logo on there, or the heart or something. But it's just nice to know that there are resources that you can start with, especially if you are feeling the pinch of it being 3 weeks out. So free resources, and then iStock, which they're very, very affordable priced. And again, you will get links to those resources in the guide that I will be sharing. So that's what I have for you. We do have a little bit of time for questions. Good luck to everybody. Please stay in touch. I'd love to hear about your campaigns and follow your campaigns. So I do have my contact info here. I'm always happy to answer questions, or again, if you want to share your campaign, I'll follow you. But I do have a code here that will take you to a page that has links to a bunch of resources. I have a branding guide and workbook for Giving Tuesday. I have some of those templates I showed you, and then some of the links to those websites for whether it's stock photography, Canva templates. You can get all of those with the QR code or the link. And then I do have an upcoming talk. It's not till 2024. I'll probably have a few more pop up before that. But you can keep in touch with me via these links. And then I'd like to extend an offer to everybody in the audience today. If you'd like to do a 30-minute brand chat, we can talk about Giving Tuesday. We can talk about any other aspects of your branding. You can sign up at that Calendly link.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lydia. I love how much you mentioned Canva. I mean, Canva is a tool that when I was a fundraiser, we had been using it. It would have been a complete life-changing
Right?
moment for us
Game
and everything we
changer.
did. Yeah. It's such an easy to use tool. Anyway, okay, we've got some questions come in. Keep them
Great.
coming in. We will get to as many as we can. And if we don't have time to get to your question, you can reach out to Lydia. Her contact information is there. But the first question is, how far in advance should you start to circulate the campaign to maximize exposure of your Giving Tuesday branding?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, 6 weeks out might be a good time to kind of get started, like, if you can. I think that Giving Tuesday recommends I think they have a toolkit. I will say I don't have a link to it in my guide. I should add it, but Giving Tuesday, the organization has amazing resources. So they do have, I think they have like a 6-week planning guide or something. So that's a good place to start to just, maybe start going on it. And then maybe you would, maybe like 4 weeks out will probably be a good time to really start talking about it. I haven't seen like a super influx of people talking about it yet. Like now that it's 3 weeks, I think people will start, putting more content out. So I would say like 6 weeks if you can get started with planning, and then maybe 4 weeks out start creating some of those, save the date. You don't have to like bombard people in your posts, but at least to save the date would be nice 4 weeks out.
Okay, great. The next question is, in your experience, what strategy works best for small to mid-sized nonprofits that might not have the same branding resources as larger nonprofits?
Yes, so definitely, download that Canva brand guide. So I call it my social media brand guide. Download that because I think you'll find that really helpful. It's just a one pager, and you can at least put in, your logo, your colors. You can put your theme, whatever you decide on your theme. And in your case, like for a smaller organization, I would look at posts that you like and kind of, make it aspirational. Like we really like how this organization did their impact post, or we really like how they did their highlighting a staff member post. So maybe you're kind of looking at it, you're creating your mood board, but it's a little bit more like aspirational of like, we like how other people are doing this. We want to do ours in a similar way. So I would maybe, start with that, treat that as a mood board. Definitely get into Canva. If you're not already, you do need to have the pro account for the full brand kit. You can load in, I think it's like 3 colors, a couple of logos, and maybe a font or something, but that's in the free version. But if you have the pro version, then you can load in as many colors as you want, as many font. You can upload your own fonts. That means your brand fonts, which is amazing. You can upload any logos or graphics or imagery. So if you can only do the free Canva, it's fine. You can still create kind of a basic brand kit and then use that. And then also those Giving Tuesday resources, they're great. I mean, even if you just use those and you put your logo in the corner and maybe some images and customize the messaging, that's better than doing nothing, or really feeling like overwhelmed and where do I start?
Yeah, that's especially a great tip since we're, a few weeks out, right? If you haven't done
Yes,
anything, that is stuff that is very quick, accessible that you can start doing right away.
exactly. Yep.
Uh, okay, the next question is, what if our organization's mission is more of achieving an idea rather than material goods? What would your advice be for a campaign like that?
Yes. So in that case, right, it might be a little bit harder to find sort of images, which are because it's achieving an idea. So in that case, I would think about how do we express it in messaging, first of all. That'll be crucial, is how are you getting that across in your messaging? Because if it's more of an idea rather than, we are providing housing, like that's very concrete. People can understand that. So in that case, I would really think about your messaging and how do we tell our story around this idea, and then how can we show it in imagery? So in that case, you might be looking at like maybe it's imagery that's a little more abstract. Maybe it's doing infographics or typographic based designs. So really kind of, the messaging I think is crucial in that aspect, because if it isn't sort of a concrete thing that people understand, then you really do have to be clear on, what is it that we're doing? How are we making this, someone's life better? How are we making the community better? And then sort of wrap the story around that, and then find imagery that maybe is a little more abstract. Or, you always stick to icons and numbers, and, infographics might be a good solution in that case.
Okay, and then we got a question that's kind of related, but somebody asked, how can organizations ensure that their chosen theme aligns with their mission and resonates with their target audience?
Yes. So I think that that's where it's good to go back to, branding 101, and think about, our who, what, and why. So really look at your mission, mission and vision, and sort of, what makes you different. That's really that why. And I think that that's really crucial to look at that aspect of it as you're developing the Giving Tuesday campaign, because people really resonate with that why. So I think in this case, really looking at the why, like why did our organization start? And this is what I walk people through when we do like brand strategy, is like, why did your organization even start? Was it some pivotal moment, that happened? Was it this idea in the founder's head and they had to do this? Was it an event? Was it something that happened in the world, in the community? So I think going back to that why and really being clear on that, and making sure that that why is evident also in your Giving Tuesday theme and your messaging, I think that will help to make sure that it's all aligned.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more. We can squeeze one more in here, but do you
Great.
have any best practices for Giving Tuesday promotion to an older demographic? So how do you get your branding out there to maybe people who aren't on social media or getting emails?
Yes, that's a good one. I mean, do a mailer. It's like we might be cutting it close now with doing a mailer. That would be something maybe 6 weeks in advance you'd need to plan out. But direct mail does still work. I mean, there are stats that I can produce to show that. So if you know that your audience responds to direct mail, in your other campaigns, I mean, most nonprofits are still doing direct mail campaigns, I think for their regular fundraising campaigns. So why not do a postcard for Giving Tuesday? It doesn't have to be as involved as maybe your, fiscal year end or your end of year campaigns with inserts and, different things. It can be a postcard. But I would say if you know that that audience has responded to direct mail, do direct mail, or maybe look at, will that older audience be at maybe an event? Is there some sort of event that's coming up? Um, that they would come to, whether it's like a community event or something maybe by the local chamber or community organization that's bringing together that demographic. Um, or, can you bring materials to places where this demographic lives? So if you're talking about maybe like, you know, um, 55 plus community or something, can you bring materials there to show them? Can you do a presentation? Can you do a webinar? So I think it's really, again, getting clear on that audience, going back to our branding 101 and our who and who our audience is, how you've been able to connect with them thus far. And yeah, definitely direct mail, if that's an option, it works. And that audience will probably, pick up their mail every day and see it in their mailbox.
Amazing. Okay, we are at time, so we are going to wrap up the session for today. Thank you so much again, Lydia, and thank you to everyone for joining. We'll all be cheering you on during Giving Tuesday and as we head into year-end giving season. Before we go, I just want to let everyone know there will be a very brief survey that will pop up right after this session. It should take you only about 20 seconds, so we would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback. We also have our next webinar coming out on November 16th called Impact Measurement for Nonprofits, How to Increase Funding and Improve Retention. So we hope that you all check that out at the link that Stephanie has put in the chat. So thank you again, everyone, and we will see you at the next webinar.